The sacrifice, the blessed burden. Sacrifice and burden, it deals with giving and receiving. Our strong desires draw us towards things. We can have good or bad desires. Whichever type of desire we have, once that desire gets what it wants, a sacrifice and a burden will be required. Are you ready for the burden? Whatever we are blessed with or strongly want requires a sacrifice and comes with a burden. When you sacrifice, you're giving up something or for something else. You're giving. When you're burdened, you are carrying the weight of someone or something you're receiving, taking on. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is known as killing an animal or person or surrendering a thing, offering up something. Normally, the sacrifice is connected to something that's very special and of great value to you. But a burden is known as a heavy weight, a load, a responsibility, a requirement, an obligation, a duty to deal with something. A burden is carrying a weight for someone or something. Normally, it's very hard. So sacrifice deals with giving up something that's very valuable to us, but a burden is carrying and taking on the weight. The blessed burden is kind of like that Tootsie Roll lollipop where the outer shell is hard, but as the layers go down, you get to the soft part. So there are curses or blessings in a burden, but the blessed burden has layers to the blessing. The blessed burden only is seen through the layers of patience, tolerance, endurance, stamina, fortitude, grit, serenity, calmness, mercy, forgiveness, and self-control. Hebrews 6:12, it says, through faith and patience, we inherit the promise. So through trust and tolerance, we inherit the blessing. The things we strongly want can turn out good or bad. Either way, something will be sacrificed. For example, God so loved the world that he sacrificed his son, Jesus. The burden responsibility was sitting at the right hand of God, being the Son of God and being the example to the world, but that responsibility burden became a blessing to us all. Also, Hannah in the Bible, she strongly desired and so wanted to have a baby. That desire led her to sacrifice her time, her prayers. She showed forth grit and patience. And then she sacrificed that son. And then the burden blessing was having more children, having the responsibility of taking care of them and tending to them. But that responsibility became a blessed burden. It was a blessing. Also, Jacob and Rachel in the Bible. Jacob so loved Rachel. He wanted Rachel, and he sacrificed his time, 7+ years and other things that he had to do to get his wife. But also that burden responsibility was getting the wife and taking care of her and doing the duties of the husband, of what he wanted to do. So this responsibility burden became a blessing. Also, the woman with the issue of blood in the Bible, she so strongly wanted her healing. She sacrificed her safety, pushing through the crowd, and a possible harm being done to her, and the pressure. And so the burden, responsibility of healing, of fighting the good fight of faith, and remaining in that posture and attitude and healing mindset and faith. So the burden becomes a seen and felt blessing. We are able to see and feel the blessing, and we see the blessings that God has given us. We feel that even as Hannah, when she went through the sacrifice, that burden of seeing more children became seen and felt. Now, the cursed burden, when your load is heavier than you can bear, or beyond your ability, beyond your strength to resist, beyond power to endure, it's not a blessed burden. Matthew 11:30 says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. God is saying that his yoke, the blessed burden or the blessed yoke is easy. and light. Now, Eve so desired and strongly wanted to take from the tree. She sacrificed her relationship and covenant with God. And this was not a blessed burden would happen. This was a cursed burden because she was kicked out of the garden, and that was a heavy burden. Eve leaving the relationship with God was an ungodly sacrifice, and it was too heavy to bear, where we are still reaping the consequences from that sacrifice that she did. 1 Peter 2:5, it talks about spiritual sacrifices, and that some sacrifices are acceptable to God and others are not. Sometimes cursed burdens come because of our choices that we make, or to buffet, teach, and correct us, that the power of God may rest upon us. 2 Corinthians 12:7-9. So remember, the things we strongly want, we will often have to sacrifice for them. Every blessing brings a burden and sacrifice. Greatness, goodness, blessings requires great sacrifice from either you or someone before you. Godly sacrifices, the burden often gets easier, but lustful sacrifices, the burden often stays harder or gets harder. How to deal with the burden? Well, first become aware of the process, like listening to this video and just reading more and understanding the process, that there is a blessing that can be possibly be in your burden. Also, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may be able to choose what is a good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And so that you may be able to choose how to sacrifice and what to sacrifice for. Also, keeping our strong wants, keeping our desires under subjection, under God, and keeping our hopes in God will also keep us from lustful sacrificing. Also, see the video about hope to get more information and understanding about our desires and hope. Thank you so much for listening.